Welcome to That's What She Said, where we'll spill the tea on women empowerment in the Great Lakes Bay region with your host, Christiana Malacara.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of That's What She Said with me. My name is Christiana Malacara. I want to say thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you spending the next hour with me as we explore yet another wonderful woman from the Great Lakes Bay region. So I wanted to start out by saying this week, I personally had to kind of step up and advocate for myself and also advocate for someone around me. And then that had me kind of going into this whole whirlwind of emotion of when is the best time to do that? How do you do that? Are there rules? Is there a thing about, following rules to advocate for yourself? And it kind of took me in the direction of who guides you when you need to be your own leader? Who guides you when you need to step up for yourself? And I didn't know. I really didn't know. A lot of times in my life, I'm able to lean on someone, and I'm so fortunate for that. Or I'm able to ask for advice. I'm definitely one of those girls that are like, hey, if I don't have the answer, let me find someone who does. And in this instance, I didn't really know anyone who had that answer except for myself. And I had to trust my instinct and be able to step up for myself. I have a wonderful guest here today who does a whole lot of stepping up for other people. And we're going to even see if she had to step up for herself at one point in time. We're going to find the root of the conversation and just kind of move forward on sharing advice on how to step up for yourself, how to advocate for yourself. And I want to challenge you as a listener to think about a time where maybe you had to advocate for yourself or someone else. How did you do that? Was there a right way? Was there a wrong way? Is there someone you can lean on now? All of these questions will hopefully get the wheels turning and we'll come up with some answers. But you are listening to WSGW 100.5 and 790. That's What She Said with Christiana Malacara. We are on social media on Thursdays, on the sound waves of the radio on Sundays at 6, and 24/7 on Spotify. I always encourage to share and to definitely pass along these little pearls of wisdom throughout your life as we are going to explore these pearls of wisdom with the guest that we have today, Miss Sharon Norman. Hi, Sharon. Thanks for coming in today.
It is absolutely a pleasure. Glad to be here.
I was so excited when we connected first, and I kept hearing wonderful things about you. And I was like, well, you know what? I think this enough is enough. We need to get you behind the microphones. That way we can continue to share all these wonderful things all about you. So, Sharon, can you share with us how the community would know you?
May know me in a few ways. First, I'll say I am the wife of Brent Norman. So my husband was born and raised in the Saginaw area. And so we moved back to the area about 7 years ago. So that's one way people might know me. Another way, I gladly am the mother of Hannah and Natalie, and they attend township schools. And I substitute taught in their schools for them, all of my oldest girls, ninth through 12th. And then I still sub for the educators for my youngest kid. Another way you might know me, I sing the national anthem at the Loons and at Spirit Games. So
that's awesome.
So you might know me that way.
Okay. All right.
So that's one of those ways. Another way you might know me, I serve as co-pastor with my husband at Journey of Grace Church of the Nazarene. And finally, another way you might know me, well, no, not finally, I am the Prevention Education Director for the CAN Council. And lastly, if you catch me in the community, I'm always going to say hi. You find me talking to somebody. So that is possible.
So we can find you talking, singing, educating.
All the things.
So let's see. This is wonderful. I love how you kind of started out with, hey, I'm a wife and a mom.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yep.
And then, the national anthem. That's pretty cool. I did not know that. We probably crossed paths that way. I love going to local sports. It's just a good way to
Mhm.
support your community and have fun around town, right? So, your role at the CAN Council, can
Mhm.
you define that? Can you tell us a little more about that?
Absolutely. So, CAN Council has been an organization that's been in our community for 45 years that focuses on child abuse and neglect. Our mission is to build safe communities where children are free from abuse and neglect. And so, my particular role, we have several programs within our organization that start with our Children's Advocacy Center, our CASA program, which are volunteers who walk with children through their foster care case. We have a rolling family resource center. So, where there may be a barrier for transportation, our large 28-foot RV will roll into communities with different resources for families. And then finally, we have prevention education. And prevention education, I like to call it the sunshine of CAN Council, because really what we get to do is go in with the hopes of stopping something from ever happening, or keeping something from ever happening, or if something is happening that might be endangering a child, we provide the type of information that will empower adults or children to help those around them stop whatever may be happening. And so I lead a team of 4, and we go into schools. We do parent cafes for parents, so that we provide empowerment for them. A strong family will raise resilient children. And so our goal is to empower parents, which enables them to strengthen their families again, and then provide information about all things child abuse and neglect, so that we provide our children and adults with the language, with the tools to know how we can, again, stop it, or prevent it from ever happening by creating safe spaces for kiddos. So that's the job I get to do every day, and I love it.
That does sound very sunshiny.
It is. If you walk into my office, literally, my office has all the yellow decor. And because I don't know, there's something about, we see a lot and we hear a lot of really, really bad things. And the kind of work we do is the kind of work that leaves a stain on you when you go home. You can't unhear the stories. You can't unhear or unsee the things that you've seen, right? You just can't do it. We often get a lot of trauma dumping on those of us who work in this field. And so if you lose sight of why you do what you do, it makes it hard to be free of the stuff that's put on you throughout the day or the week. And that becomes super important. If I'm going to show back up at the table and see that family as an individual unit, and not, make them, just because I heard it here and I heard it there, all families are going that. Absolutely not. You need some sunshine and you need some joy to remind you of why you do what you do. It's just important. And so I don't know, I probably have taken it upon myself for our teams that, hey, y'all, it's good. You guys are doing great. Hang in there. Yep, it was a tough day yesterday. I am the hugger in the office. Do you just need a hug? I'll give you one of them grandma hugs.
The free
and
hugs.
just hold on to you until you're done with whatever you need to do. And so, obviously barring, definitely honoring boundaries, but giving our team that space because it's important. And so,
it sounds like your personality pairs really well with your position. How did you come about this position? Is this something that you've always wanted to do?
So, well, long story.
We're here for it. We're here for it.
So, as I said, I am also, I serve as a pastor, co-pastor at a church. For 25 years, I have served in the pastorate. I began serving in the pastorate back in 2002, started as a worship pastor, and was on staff at different church in Grand Rapids. And then we moved to Illinois. And I have sung forever. Singing is like breathing for me. If you encounter me, you hear me humming. Like it's just the way I am, right? And so been singing for a long time. And during my time in Illinois, serving on staff, was part of a large church. And one of the things that I kept sensing People would get really, really in their feelings if I didn't do a certain song. So if it wasn't this type of song, or it wasn't a hymn, or it wasn't these different things, that I've started to feel like a jukebox, right?
Mm.
And in this journey, faith is very important to me. In this journey of my faith, I felt like moments where I was saying, okay, Lord, I did not sign up to be nobody's jukebox. Like, I heard that this whole journey of faith was this adventure, and I'd follow you wherever. I cannot believe you got me following you into this building every week to be a jukebox, to be someone's favorite song. And I can't, I was really struggling with that, to the point where it's like, you know what? We sing about doing all these good, nice, godly things, but you see the same of us in the stores, and we're rude to the checkout lady, or we're just like, we're not
Genuine.
right. It's
Mhm.
like I really struggled with that. And so at the time, I was finishing up my undergrad. I went back to school late. That's a whole nother story. And
We'll get there
we
too.
might, we might have to have several podcasts together, sis. But
Mr. Newman part 2.
right. But I was finishing my undergrad, really didn't know what to do next. And during this time, there was an opportunity that came up for our church to connect with the community. And there had been a community assessment, and they had asked the church to come to the table. Well, at the time, I felt like I was the staff member that drew the short straw to go represent our team, right? And so when I got there, one of the things, there was an assessment on where the state of the children in the community that literally was across the street, right? It was called Bradley. And one of the things that the hospital had done this along with some other entities, they were learning that if children were not, if we were not doing assessments by kindergarten, then we could hang up the whole readiness and reading levels by third grade. And we were really setting up a school to prison pipeline a lot sooner, because we weren't addressing some issues within these homes early, or with these children early. And it wrecked me a bit, especially when they started to talk about the experiences at the school in the little town next across the street. And I could not understand how we were such a big, affluent church, but there was such a level of poverty next door.
Okay.
And it was like, okay, but I'm a jukebox, but we got this issue over here. And so I guess it was, do you remember Popeye?
I do.
You remember Popeye would have this encounter with Brutus, and Brutus would do whatever he did and hurt Popeye's olive oil, and Popeye would say, I've had all I can stand, and I can't stand no more.
Yes.
I had my
You were
Popeye
there.
moment.
You
It
were
was
there.
my, what we would call a holy discontent.
Okay.
And I was like, there's no way that I can sing in all of my affluence while there are kids who are suffering with nothing. Like, what am I spending myself on? So
right outside of the doors.
yep. So I
Okay.
graduated and actually went back, or continued on to school in the graduate program. I got my MBA with a concentration in healthcare, which focuses on building, my degree focused on building community health organizations that were sustainable and actually impacting the community. And that changed, it really changed the trajectory of everything I would and wanted to do. After that, I said I didn't want to work in church full time anymore. If I wasn't going to live in the community, it was kind of pointless for me.
Mhm.
And so I never went back. After I finished school, I did not go back to full-time ministry. And even before I finished school, we ended up moving here and took a part-time job at a church here.
How old were you when you went back to school?
Ooh, child. Let me see. Natalie was 3.
Oh,
So we're
challenge right
talking,
there.
I was
Okay.
40. I was 40.
Wow.
It took me almost 8 years to do undergrad and graduate school.
So for that time,
hmm
okay, you're a wife, a mother.
hmm
You're navigating through, where should I place myself?
hmm
And then you're like, I'm gonna go to school.
Yep.
Where was the motivation? And I need to go back to school. Like, what was that motivation like? And what was that experience like with the little one?
So initially going back to school, I was very clear. Part of my schooling had to do with being able to get ordained. And so I had to have certain amount of education. And then in that process of schooling, I learned that I love to learn and I had an ability to learn. See, I had dropped out when I was 18 or 19. And I just assume the amount of failure or sense of failure that I carried with that dropout.
Drop out from college.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
I followed me like, again, that's a whole nother story, but it followed me for years, that sense of failure, and not being able to accomplish something. So when I actually went back to school, my undergrad is in pastoral ministries. And I was like, shoot, I've been a pastor for years. Surely I can get an A or at least a B
Yeah.
in pastoral ministries.
Yeah.
And then, and actually I almost talked myself out of doing my graduate school because I was like,
Why?
I can't do a master's in business. Like, it was easy we can do that to ourselves, right? I was living with 19-year-old Sharon that had dropped out.
Okay.
And she kept telling me I couldn't do it. And I kept believing her. And then there were the beauty of a village who came around. It was like, girl, you can do this and then some. And actually, I graduated my MBA with a 3.99.
Whoa.
I never thought it.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Okay.
My lowest grade was an A-, and that was in communication. Go figure.
Oh,
communication class. Yeah.
What?
So
the pastor got a C. Well,
yeah.
In communication.
Right. How would that work?
Okay.
But I got an A-.
You got an A-.
Everything else were A's. Yeah. And so I would have never thought it. And actually throughout the classes, 19-year-old Sharon kept saying, you're going to flunk this next one. There ain't no way you can do a managerial finance class.
Why was 19-year-old Karen still, Sharon, I'm sorry. Why was 19-year-old still there? And why did she care? There we go.
A great question. One that literally my best friend, Cherie, helped me to unpack literally like 2 months ago.
Just 2 months ago?
Yeah.
When did you graduate?
I graduated in 2019, child.
And so 2 months.
2 months ago.
2 months ago,
Yeah.
you've unpacked this.
Just unpacked that. And a lot, why 19-year-old Sharon had such a significant voice is because it was the biggest source of failure that I had. And I feared that kind of failure again. And this time there were higher stakes. My daughters were looking at me. My husband was saying, is this what we spend our money on? You know what I mean? There was, I remember the look of my mother's face when I dropped out. Like, I can remember this vividly when I had to own up that I wasn't in school anymore, and her sense of the look of failure in her face. And I feared ever seeing that from someone. And so one of the things that 19-year-old Sharon would do, she would drive me to not pursue whatever it was. Then I couldn't fail myself or anybody else. And so fortunately, I had an incredible mentor and she is a Saginaw native, Carolyn Allen. She was Carolyn Quinn at the time. But Carolyn saw me when I was a hot mess, and she never used it against me. She just kept speaking into me. And she did for years. And Carolyn thought I was good. And she made me think, maybe you're right. I am a little good,
What
And
made you
to this
believe
day-
her?
She was very real. She did not, in the church community growing up, there was sometimes the expectation that there was a level of perfection you needed to live up to. Well, I wasn't perfect, and Carolyn didn't expect me to be perfect. She expected me to show up. And she was the kind of womanhood. She was a single woman. She was the kind of womanhood that she respected herself. She was the kind of womanhood you embodied to follow. And so I surrounded myself around her. For years, we were together. And so she made a difference for me. And even to this day, I will say she is one of those women who stepped up in my life, she is what I needed. She didn't look at me with failure. She just never did.
How important is it for a woman to surround themselves with people, period, and then people they want to be like?
Yeah, it's vital. When we're doing our parenting class, I say one of the things we talk about is social connections, and the reality is everybody needs a friend and everybody needs a village. One of the things and you can choose your village. No village has to be sent to you or put on you. You can choose your village. You can choose the people that you allow in your space. And when you choose the people, and here's the thing, it's not about always choosing people who are just like you. Sometimes you got to choose people who may not be just like you, but you aspire to. One of my closest friends, I call her my person. She is an 80-year-old white woman. Hear what I'm saying?
Yep.
And she is one of my ride or dies, Miss K. And we don't have a background that's alike at all. But she's been married 55 years. She got 4 grown children. She loves the Lord with all her heart. That's who I want to be. I want to look back and say, that's the woman that I am. And so the best way to be that woman is what? To pull up next to that woman, sit at her feet and learn, hear her stories. That's the village I chose. I can choose my village, and I do that. I do that every day. I'm an awkward village picker. I really am. I am the person. I know it's weird. And one of my colleagues at the office, they will tell you, I'm like, you know what? I would really like to choose you to be my work bestie. Okay. We're probably not going to go out to lunch. We're not going to do stuff, but you're my work bestie. Can that work for you?
It works for me. Are you on board?
Right. And so, but I really do. I pick who I'm around, and it's not out of arrogance. It's not I know me, and I know I need people who will be honest with me. I'm a strong personality. I don't need you to coddle me. I don't need you to always, oh, Sharon, you so awesome. No, Sharon, you tripping today.
Yeah.
You need to think about.
That's a different type of love.
It's a necessary love. It's a refining love. I need to be refined. I don't need to be coddled. If I'm going to be a great woman, if I'm going to do what I need to do to be impactful in my community, I don't need you to coddle me. I need you to help. Iron sharpens iron. That don't feel good, but it's necessary. I am a strong woman because of the strong women around me who weren't afraid to say the difficult things when I needed to hear them. And I need that.
So here in the next couple minutes before we go to our break, I have a different perspective on this. And maybe it's not my personal perspective, but just a different way to look at this now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We're here gathering as women. We're gathering other women to put in our circle. What if we fall into a circle that we do not want to be part of? How does that work in reverse for you?
One, boundaries. And I firmly believe you don't have to be where you don't want to be. We choose to be where we are. Now, if you're in a bad scenario, you still got choices. The choice is to go or to stay. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy to go, but that's still your choice. We live in a world sometimes that almost says if something happens to you, you're kind of resigned to it. No, 10%, we hear this all the time. 10% is what happens. 90% is how you respond. I believe that 100%.
Can you say that again?
10% is what happens to you. 90% is how you respond to it.
Wow.
And that's just how you respond to it is totally up to you. And I got in my own life, I have the stories to back that up.
And we will be right back to hear all of those stories and hopefully so much more. There might need to be a part 2, guys. I'm here for it. So you're listening to That's What She Said with Christiana Malacara and our wonderful guest. We are sitting with Sharon Norman, and tune back in for the second half and you'll hear some more stories.
That's What She Said with Christiana Malacara is back. Now let's spill the tea.
All right, and we are back with our second half of That's What She Said. And we were just listening about Sharon. Sharon, you said iron sharpens iron, but it doesn't always feel good. I've never heard that second part, the feeling part of it. Iron sharpens iron. This I'm fairly new to. Honestly, all these little fun quotes that people have, I've been collecting them in my pocket as I've been going along with That's What She Said. But the part about the feeling, that's important.
Yeah.
How you feel about different situations, it could navigate you to the next step, if that's up or down.
Yeah, very true.
So can you share a point in your life where you had to lean on someone when you were on the down, when there was an opportunity for someone to step in and say, let me lift you up? Because I'm hearing all these great things in our first half of the segment of, this is how I've been uplifting others. But what about you?
So in 2006, my husband and I gave birth to a beautiful boy who lived 2 hours. And remember, I was a worship pastor, so my whole job is singing and getting everybody revved up. And I remember my first Sunday back, 3 weeks after this, I sang this song called Blessed Be Your Name. And there's a part in that song where it says, you give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name. And I remember singing that song, and it's like, this sucks. But after I was done singing, I sat down because our chairs was on the platform, and I just was reduced to a pile of tears. Like I could try to fake it to make it. And I remember Eva came up to the platform and she just held me. And it was one of those moments where I could try to fake it to make it. But the reality is I was a mother who was not holding her son. And I could try to get past that with all the nice, Christian platitudes that sometimes, God will comfort you. God will help you. And I'm sitting there going home. God, this sucks. And so here's a little funny story in there. If there's a funny story to be had, it's my story. It's funny.
This is your story. Go for it.
I had gotten a plant during that time. Friends of ours sent us a plant and we got it, and the vase was broken. And that broken vase just symbolized my whole life at that moment. It was broken, right? And I was going to call FTD Floral and let them know about my broken vase. And it was at that point, right? So I call and I say to the man, I said, listen, I just lost my son, and we received this plant and it was broken. And I said, I'm going to spend the next few minutes cussing you out. It's not your fault, sir. And I'm sorry ahead of time, but I got nobody else to cuss out. And like literally, and then I went on and cussed that dude out.
No, you didn't.
And he was like, well, I'm so sorry that your plant arrived broken, and we'll get you a new one out. And ma'am, I sure hope you have a great day. I said, you too, son. It was honestly, when I look back on it, but here's the thing.
Bless him.
Yes, he let me cuss him out. And I mean, it was what it was. I didn't feel like I could curse God. I didn't feel like I could, I was sharing this journey with my husband, so I couldn't cuss him out. It wasn't somebody that I felt I could go to. But in that moment, there was a realization for me. And that is, we project our feelings all the time, right? I just had enough awareness to let the guy know he didn't do anything. Like, you ain't do nothing today. So, but we tend to do that. And what it told me in that moment is, one, I need to share this hurt with someone. Which one of my friends can bear this burden with me? And it wasn't my husband, because he had his own burden to bear. And he was just trying to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. So I couldn't then turn around and lose my mind on him.
Exactly.
So in some ways we were trying to help each other. You know what I mean?
Sure.
He just had to keep going. And we kind of had our own, he wasn't the person I was going to fall on. And it was Eva. She was a co-worker, and she was one of those people who was a part of my village. And she was the person that she shared the burden with me. And through that process, until I was no longer emotionally fragile, because I was emotionally fragile for a while doing a job that calls you to be vulnerable. It was a recipe for a train wreck. But because of her presence, and there were some other people in my life, because of their presence, I was able to rebound. That resilient, that rubber band
Mhm.
of emotional strength. I was able to rebound because they held me. So even when it got stretched so far and it felt like that rubber band was gonna snap,
Yep.
they had me. They held on enough for me, and then they cushioned me so I couldn't go too far back where it would snap. And that made all the difference. Again, that's choosing your village.
Choosing your village.
Yep. It's choosing your village.
I'm going to go back to that phone call.
Mhm.
Okay. One, thank you for sharing that. Two, I think we all need to call the flower guy every once in a while.
Right.
I mean, this sounds like a real good tactic. It depends on who you have on the other line,
Right.
on the other end of the line, right? So the first thing I thought of was sometimes, especially as women, we unload
Mhm.
our worry of the day,
Mhm.
of something at work, something at home, onto someone without asking them.
Yep.
And you didn't ask, but you gave them a warning.
Mhm.
And the analogy that I like to use is, your my plate might be full right now,
Mhm.
but when I talk to you, I'm actually giving you some of what's on my plate, but your
Oh.
plate might be full.
Mhm.
And I don't know that. I don't see that. You're not,
Absolutely.
maybe you're, not
Mhm.
vocalizing that to me, and you might
Mhm.
be my best friend.
Yep.
So I think having that self-aware, like you said, you're like, I'm fortunate enough to be self-aware
Mhm.
to say, this is what I'm going to do, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Send me the pot, please, and we'll be on our way.
Mhm.
That's beautiful. That's a
Yeah.
great
And you
thing to
know
share.
what?
Thank
It's
you.
interesting, the moment of awareness. I don't know why I had that moment of awareness, if that makes sense. I really don't know why. Because again, in a state of grief, you don't always think clearly. Um, I think part of it is I don't like to hurt people's feelings. And I can imagine me cussing out this man. I remember thinking that, like, I don't want to hurt his feelings, but I got to unload here. And I'm just not going to yell in an empty room. He it, tag you it,
Yeah.
brother. And so,
Good luck with
and I
this.
remember saying to him, you did nothing wrong. This is just where I am. It ain't got nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And so, the thing I would say, you are right. We don't always ask for permission, but that is something to think about. When we're doing our parenting or parent cafes, one of the things we talk about is emotional competence of children, like understanding how to help children regulate their emotions, right? And so one of the things I'll say to parents, you can't teach a kid what you don't know. So when you pull into the drive-through and little Miss Sarah, who is on the microphone, sound like she mad at the world, and you gonna match her energy, guess what you're not doing? You're not reflecting the kind of emotional awareness that you want your kid to pick up. Trust me on that. Right. And so when little Sarah pop off, when you pull up, here go you don't cuss little Sarah out. Thank you. Are you having a tough day, Sarah? I hope your day gets better. You can choose that. You can choose how you respond. We don't have to match Sarah's energy. We don't have to get angry with Sarah. You don't know. How do you know Sarah is not living with certain scenarios at home and she just don't know how to cope? And you the person.
You don't know what you don't know.
You don't, right. And you know what? I got enough strength in my shoulders that it's okay, Sarah. How's your day going? And generally, I'll tell you, I live by that model. Generally, I have very, very few instances where I encounter somebody who's struggling or rude, and it don't switch. It don't switch.
So you had said something in the first part of the segment of the job that you do and
Mhm.
the people in your building there at the Can Council. They have interactions, and you had said leave a stain on you
Mhm.
when you go home. What is it that you do when you get home to kind of detox from your day, to clean that emotional, stain that you gained?
So sometimes it's not when I get home. I
Mm.
I can't drop somebody else's stains off in my house. Right? because I got a husband and I got a daughter there. So I can't drop off somebody else's stain with the possibility that they will pick it up. That's not fair to them. And so a lot of times it's on the ride home. It's taking a few minutes as my day in to sit in that office. It's having conversations with staff to be able to unload that, to be able to share that. So I try not to take my work home where I dump it at home. And I have to be really careful. I have a 15-year-old who is still developing into a woman. And the last thing I need to do is saddle her with scenarios that my husband and I have worked hard to make sure she don't ever have to endure. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Help her to build some resilience, but
There you go.
not because she got to overcome somebody else's trauma that I'm unloading on her because I brought it home from work. And so I'll tell you some of the things that I do to kind of help with that. I have a time in the morning where I call it my quiet time. I do a devotional that may include prayer. It may include Bible reading, where I kind of set myself for the day. After I drop my girl off at school because she gets to do the radio, bless her heart. I know all kinds of music. I'm just saying.
You mean you're not listening to WSGW in the morning?
Shawn Mendes and a whole bunch of other people that I wouldn't normally listen to. I know a whole bunch of them. Thank you, sweet girl.
Maybe that's her me time.
That's that's our time. Like literally, that it's listening to music, and we'll listen to whatever but as soon as she gets out the car, turn it off because that's not my ride to work. That's what she needs. So that's what we gonna give you. And so it's quiet sometimes. Or I'll maybe listen more to talk things. But just to get myself, when I get in the office, I don't immediately jump into work. Part of my work day includes sometimes my colleague Lionel, he gave me this term brain dumping. And so he will take out a paper and everything that's on his mind, he just writes down to get it out. So we're just going to dump it out because some of it you don't need now. Some of it you might, but at least you can determine what it is you need. And so I give a better version of myself to Can when I make space for that.
So your time to detox from this stain is recycling into now I've cleared myself to give a better me today.
Yep.
I love that.
Because what did I learn from the trauma that was dumped on me, right? So sometimes the trauma that's dumped is a parent's experience that is like, oh my gosh, you really got an experience working here, and it's like, what do we even do with that? And sometimes it's being able to go back and say, okay, do we offer all the services that we need so we can best equip this parent? What's in our wheelhouse to do? And sometimes that dumping allows me to rethink. And then it's like, you know what? We got a partner for this. This is a great way to partner. So when I see this parent next week, I can say to this, hey, you mentioned XYZ. Here's some options for you. So being able to do that brain dump from whatever was put on me allows me to maybe even think about, can we be more effective in another way? Is this something, what I get from that experience, is this something for me to take and internalize? And what do I do with that? Is this a tool that I can teach my kid?
There we go.
Doing that. Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about empowerment, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about women's empowerment specifically. So in these situations where you're like, Mama, you went through an experience.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see yourself as an empowering character to get them through that situation?
Well, I would say I firmly believe no trial is ever wasted. Everything that I have gone through, I love to believe that it wasn't just for me. It happened to me, but it wasn't just for me. My dad left when I was 3, I think. And I talked to him twice, when I was 7 and when I was 28. And when I and I was always the one pursuing him, my father, right? And after 28, I pursued him again around the time I turned 41. And what I found was his obituary. That's how I found him. And when I read the obituary, Guess whose name was not in it? Mine wasn't in it. So all those years I had been preparing my life to one day I had this all great plan that one day my dad was going to finally see me. Now, I'm a 41-year-old woman, okay? I'm not even a little girl anymore.
Yeah.
I'm a 41-year-old woman, married, and we already have in this mind that one day dad is going to need his daughter and I am going to show up and I'm going to take care of him and do all the things, right? Well, that day never came. In addition, the only thing it said, he leaves to mourn his loving daughter, Marjorie. So I got a sister out there somewhere, but my name was never in it. So um, there is no pain like the pain of abandonment. No matter who I mean, there's just no pain like it because there's your worth is tied to why that abandonment happened oftentimes. You oftentimes tie your worth to that. So what did I do wrong? What could I have done differently to make my dad want me, to make him be a dad? And so that kind of, working through life, getting through that, understanding my value took a long time.
So do you believe that you had this lack of value prior or post seeing your dad's obituary?
Oh, it's prior.
Prior.
Because I'd always wondered where he was.
But I don't see that right now. How did we overcome that?
Absolutely. Well, let me tell you. As I said, my faith is extremely important to me. It is a definer for me. And it really, for me, it was understanding who I am not just Robert's daughter. I'm God's child. That's how I see myself. And while he made choices that weren't about me, they were about him.
Mm.
He did the best he could with what he had to work with. That ain't got nothing to do with me. And I think as a child, I own that. If I was a better child, if I was this, if I was that, he would have been a better dad. Well, I don't have that control. His choices are his choices. And so I think just this process, therapy is a blessing. I'll tell anyone, if you think it's for crazy people, you might be the one that's lacking some. I'm not gonna say those words.
So therapy.
Yeah. I don't want to get what do you call it? I don't want to get canceled for saying the wrong words.
Okay, we're not gonna cancel you.
Yeah. So
I hear you.
but therapy
Politically
is huge.
correct. So
right.
therapy. So
Therapy was huge. And
Okay.
so being able to sit, talk about my values, talk about who I understand who I am, talk about the power of choice.
What are some of those values that you hold close to you?
I am worthy of love. And at the root, I am worthy. I am enough. I am joy. I have peace and I can control what comes in that space that impacts that peace. I am safe. Those are some incredible values to have. And I get when you're lacking in a clear value, and because I understand those values, things that happen in, or the things that I bring around myself, or the things that come into my life, if they begin to impact any of those values, I really do go back to the why. Why am I not at peace right now? What's interacting with that? Is it some choices that I'm making? Is it some people I'm allowing myself to be around? What's happening? So
you're checking in with yourself.
Absolutely.
And how often do you feel like someone would need to check in with themselves?
Probably daily.
Really?
Like if you get up and you ain't feeling yourself today, why? And so I'll tell you, last week was that week for me. I got up the first day. I didn't want to go to work. That's odd. Why don't you want to go to work, Sharon? I don't know. Well, let's go to work then, because I didn't want to, but it's like
we didn't know the why. So
right, because if I just do something and not know why, then I run the risk of really going down a road that maybe I don't want to be down. So next day I got up, still feeling some kind of way, not knowing why. Now, prior to all this, it had a big thing take place. Um, Resolution to a long-term thing that I had been working on, and
Okay.
I was in this period of letdown. And so I've done theater. I used to do theater for years, and you would work and work and work to be in this play. The production would happen, and then the day after, it was this mourning or this grieving period because you weren't with the people that you had been practicing with, this shared thing, like it was just done.
It's
You
over.
aren't going to do it again. There is no reprise, there's no encore. You were just done. And there's a chance relationships you built there were literally for that season. So you grieve afterwards, right? And it's like a job. If you love the job, but you got another job and it's a great opportunity, while you're excited over here, you still got to grieve what you're leaving. And that's where I was at and didn't realize it. And so last week, it was like every morning, I was not allowing myself the space to grieve. And I had to check in every day, like, sis, what is your deal? Finally, we got to Thursday. Call my work bestie. Work bestie. Girl, I'm in my feelings. I'm going to need to talk through this with somebody because it ain't working with me. And she did. Took Friday off. Shut off everything, went to my mother-in-law's house. She was gone. She made me a meal, bless her heart. And I stayed in one of her guest rooms all day long from that morning to that evening.
So you changed
And
your
it's
whole environment.
so did. It's exactly what I needed. It was exactly what I needed, but it required that I check in. I wasn't feeling myself. I wasn't feeling my normal me, and I wasn't going to let that pass, because if you don't feel your normal self for several days, you don't check in, you run the risk of that turning into something.
A feeling that isn't
Yeah.
normal, or some type of like part of your routine.
Yeah. And that feeling of like, I love my job. I love it, but I was struggling with going to work. What's wrong here? That's not like me at all. So, but I couldn't really put my finger on what all it was. But had I done that and not check in, we would be in week 2 and it would show up in another way, because it always does. Your grief, your trauma, your all of that, it keeps count, and it will wait for you to address it. It always will. It will wait for you to acknowledge it.
I've heard this about trauma just in our last couple of minutes. I'll add this before our final question. I've heard that trauma can be stored in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And just getting up in the morning and stretching out your body can help. And, and I'm saying you stretched out your environment. You left one place and went to another for a day, checked out, and then came back. And did you go to work on Monday?
Yeah.
Do you feel good?
Awesome. I'm back. But I get it. And it doesn't mean that all those feelings went away. I know what they are. I know what it was that was bothering me. And now I can address that. I don't run away from it. I know what it was that I was struggling with. And so because I can address it, there are some steps that I'm taking every day to be extra sensitive to that part of me that still needs to work through what I needed to work through. Because you got to be sensitive to yourself.
I think that's a great piece of advice. I really do. I don't check. I'll be honest, I don't check in with myself every day, because you get in that hustle bustle of the day. But in our last minute here on the show, could you share a piece of advice that you could give to a woman or a person here in the Great Lakes Bay region about empowerment?
The thing I would leave, which probably wraps up a lot of what we've said, the power of a village. And everything that we've talked about, I've pointed back to different women in my village who have helped me in hard times, in good times, celebrated with me, cried with me, encouraged me, chastised me when necessary. And you can pick your village. Your village is not a foregone conclusion. And also, if you don't pick your village, don't think the village picks you. Sometimes you find yourself as an island.
I think this is a great piece of advice: to pick your village, keep to it, protect it, and love it. Thank you so much for being here, Sharon. And that's what she said.